some plant foods might trigger immunologic reactions in some people. So the overarching idea here, which is really fascinating to me, Western medicine doesn't really get this yet, is that not all foods, even foods that we might consider healthy or unprocessed, work for everyone's immune system. Yeah. So this is fascinating because I have autoimmune tendencies. I get eczema, I get asthma. These are part of this atopic condition in like that they cluster together in humans. And so even foods that we think of as healthy might not be great for me. So I try and eat tomatoes. Tomatoes are a nightshade along with goji berries and eggplant. And I'm half Italian, right? My last name is Saladino.
Do you de-seed the tomatoes?
Yes, I de-seed them. I take the skin off and I still get eczema within 3 or 4 days. I did it recently because I thought I love tomatoes. I would make this tomato paste myself. I go to the farmer's market in Costa Rica. I get organic tomatoes. I boil them. I take the skin off. I take all the seeds and then I pressure cook them or I cook them in a pan and I still get eczema. So it's just a food that clearly doesn't quite work with my immune system. But some people can eat tomatoes just fine. But this is really what I learned from the carnivore diet phase is that if you have, I think the biggest takeaway for me was that like, people that have autoimmune disease should really think about what foods they're eating. And a lot of foods we think of as healthy, some vegetables, can cause this issue for people. And 100%. There are defense chemicals in plants, especially the vegetables.
Right. And would you say because of these things in the fruits and the vegetables, they create inflammation in our body? And I do feel like, you know, the root cause to a lot of these autoimmune diseases are inflammation in our body. And so how would you tell somebody that if they're maybe struggling with asthma or any other autoimmune diseases, would you tell them to kind of make trial runs? So per month, kind of eliminate things, slowly reintroduce them, see kind of like what works for them, doesn't work?
I think that's a really good strategy. So inflammation is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but it just is activation of the immune system. So you have B cells, you have T cells, you have natural killer cells, and inflammation is when the immune system is getting triggered and it's doing its thing. It's really signals that are exchanged between cells in our body. That's inflammation. And so for some people, some plant chemicals can cause that, probably because they disturb the gut, and a lot of the immune system is wrapped around the gut.
Right.
So I think that thinking about that and simplifying the diet is a great step for people with autoimmune disease. And I can't tell you how many people I've met at this point in my life through being online, through comments, through gatherings, through meet and greets, who come up to me and tell me they had XYZ condition, whether it's psoriasis in their legs or something like a gut condition like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, any of these Sjogren's, multiple sclerosis. So many autoimmune conditions do respond to intentional dietary choices. And the first step is not necessarily carnivore or even variations of it. It can just be cutting out processed food.
1,000,000%. That's literally was my journey when I, like you, I had asthma when I was young, and I was on so many steroids and things. And what healed me was food. I went to a naturopath doctor and he tested my toes, and I eliminated so much. Like I was off of pretty much everything.
Now, how does a guy that's watching you speak right now? Because dude, like when you're speaking, you speak with such like confidence because you know the breakdowns to everything. How does a man like myself know like go into the realm of like studying what my body's good with and not good with, like even the lectins you guys were talking about?
Lectins, yeah.
Only thing about lectin that I thought I was going to elect Trump for president. I didn't think anything else about lectin.
Yeah. I think that this is where we get back to the idea of an elimination diet, and I'll frame it like this, and then we'll get back to your second question. If you're thriving, don't change anything. Just keep thriving, right? If you're thriving, you don't need to change what you're eating.
What if they're eating fast food?
If you're thriving eating fast food, man, I mean, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be thriving forever, but like, who am I to tell you to stop, right? But if you're not thriving, then there's your motivation. There's step one. There's your sort of spark. And if you're not thriving, then make intentional changes with your diet and stick to it for 3 to 4 weeks. And that's not going to be easy, but it's going to be so valuable. It's the single most valuable thing you can do for your health long term. You can go and see a doctor, they'll give you a prescription, but you won't learn what's causing your issues, whether they're gut issues or depression and anxiety or sleep issues or infertility or low libido or skin rashes, whatever you've got. Like, you're not going to learn what's causing that if you just take a medicine to mask it. So do the experiment for yourself. You have full agency and sovereignty to go to the grocery store and select different foods. And so which foods do I eat? I think that the simplest sort of baseline diet for people is an animal-based diet. That's just what I've called it. And it's like a carnivore diet plus some plants. So basically it's meat and fruit is a good starting point. And I don't think everybody needs to, that's basically how I eat. I don't think everybody needs to eat that way, but that's a good starting point. If you
What kind of fruits?
Basically any fruit you want.
Really?
And
Yeah,
do you
pretty much.
eat them in season or it doesn't matter?
Preferentially, but then we're getting like kind of granular. I don't want to make it impossible for people.
Okay.
Yeah, but like meat and fruit, like if you just ate, George, if you just ate meat, and you can eat chicken, you can eat fish, you can eat beef. If you just ate meat plus fruit for the next month, I guarantee you'll lose like 10 pounds and you'll feel so much better. Now, that's a limiting diet for you long term.
But I love meat. I'm so fine with that.
You want to add things back and you just add them back easily. You were talking about this earlier, you know, like the idea of adding things back sequentially and so you know what's happening in your body. For me, I add tomatoes and I just add tomatoes and I say, my eczema is getting triggered. My body doesn't work with that. So you have to have something that you want to fix, whether it's joint pain, you want to lose weight, you want to feel better, you want to sleep better, whatever.
All of those.
Yeah.
Everything you just said.
Then just you make a simple change with your diet and you could just do meat and fruit or meat, fruit, and sweet potato or something, but you have to have some diet that gives you some parameters.
What's the first thing you say get rid of for like me, for example?
Probably the junk food, probably the fast food.
Hey, okay, can I ask you something? Do you think a lot of us are getting misinformation online from people that are dressed as doctors?
Of course, but people accuse me of that too. So
Really?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's just like it's kind of like when people read the Bible. Some people take it a certain way, and some people take it a different way. Does that ever get annoying? And also, like, how do you know which is fully correct and what is not? Is it just up for examination? Like you have to test it?
This guy wants more meat. He's like sneaks into the podcast.
Tommy is obsessed with him because he just like is after the meat.
I love you.
Yeah, he smells like the walking meat stick.
I made friends with your dog first. So I really understand this and I understand people's plight because it's confusing, right? You would think like what I think people should do is use their intuition, and this was in your podcast with Barbara O'Neill. Be your own doctor, right? Don't take anyone's advice at face value, you know, like just interpret it, like take it in, think about what it means to you, see how it feels intuitively, experiment, and then see how you feel honestly in your body. That's ultimately what you're looking for because there are lots of very well-intentioned, intelligent vegans who are telling you that meat is bad. And I'm sitting here as a well-intentioned human telling you that meat is incredibly nutritious for humans and uniquely valuable. So how is someone supposed to parse that out? They're not probably going to read all the literature and all the meta-analyses.
Yeah, because Barbara doesn't agree with that.
I know. I heard on the podcast.
I think you guys should fight and see
We can
who
have
survives.
That would be such an interesting podcast to have the two of you, you know, speaking on your different, you know.
Was there anything you
information.
took away from that podcast that you enjoyed?
I appreciated a lot of that podcast. I love that she said, if you eat meat, eat organic meat. She seemed very open-minded to it. She didn't seem completely closed to it. And I really like that she is trying to understand the root cause of an illness. And I think that there's a lot of value in human experience. And this is another thing that Western medicine doesn't really appreciate. I mean, like, there are so many people, like I said, who have done an animal-based diet, basically meat and fruit, or just meat, and their autoimmune conditions get better. And to be fair, there are people who do vegan diets and see their autoimmune conditions get better. So what's going on there? That's very valuable. You know, my perspective would be if you do a vegan diet and your conditions get better, it was probably the processed food, potentially the processed food, and I worry about long-term nutritional deficiencies. But again, if people are thriving on vegan diets, more power to them. I just worry about their long-term nutritional status because I've seen it time and time and time again when people eliminate all meat and all animal foods. And I want to get to fish because we got to talk about this, the potential issues with fish for you. But yeah, I loved how open-minded she was and how she was actually trying to get to the root cause. And that's what it's about. We're all just trying to understand these things. And I love that. Hopefully these conversations give people hope because so many people are suffering. And I don't say that lightly. So many people have issues, either they can't conceive or they have eczema or gut issues like you or sleep disturbance or depression. And like we said at the beginning of the podcast, you go to a doctor and they say, here's a medication. Even the most intelligent, well-intentioned doctors often don't have much more to offer than that. So how cool is it that people like me or Barbara get to give people more tools when they're really ready for it?
Yeah.
I just want there to be more options for people so that when they're ready, they can say, okay, maybe I'll try what she's saying. Maybe I'll try what he's doing. Because I want people to understand you're never really beaten, you know, that the human body is incredible. And I totally agree with her that the human body wants to be healthy if we just remove the impediments toward that health. That's a very naturopathic perspective, not an allopathic perspective. So what I did medical school in, I have an MD, is allopathic medicine. But I really believe that naturopathic medicine has the right perspective, which is remove the impediment and the body will heal.
Amazing.
I love that you're doing what you set your heart out to do when you started to do the whole medical field thing.
Yeah.
What would you say to a gentleman that's going to school for like to be a doctor or a nurse, and they're just teaching them to write a prescription. Like, I know that I've talked to some doctors that I could tell they're just dark inside because they know what they're doing. They know that they're not helping fully. Like, how does that make you feel? And like, what would you give that man any advice with?
Man, I read the other day that there's like 1 million physicians in the United States. I didn't know there were that many doctors. Wow. 1 million doctors. I guess it makes sense. You know, a doctor can only see 10, 15 people a day. But I get so excited when I meet somebody in medical school because I think, okay, that's the future. You know, I've often thought it would be really fun to go teach at a medical school or go to medical schools and do debates with the faculty, respectful debates, because I think that if we can educate physicians, then everything will change.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, do you do bottom up or do you do top down? Like, is the government going to change things? I don't think the government, I mean, we can talk about what I would do at a governmental level. I don't think it's ever going to come from the bottom. Social media is kind of a double-edged sword. It gets used a lot from people kind of negatively, and it gets used to spread information that may or may not be true or false. And people say a lot of negative things on social media, but the amazing thing of social media is just that it allows for free exchange of information, and people can find information whereas they couldn't in the past. And so when I meet people in medical school, I think, okay, you're the future. I hope that you will just take this in, because you kind of have to do the dance, you know, get through medical school, give them the right answers that they want on the test. And then if you just think outside the box, if doctors, nurses, PAs just think, what is causing this condition I'm treating, we will be so much better off as Americans, as humans in the future. And I think it's starting. People are starting to kind of question the mainstream narrative, and that's a big deal.
And thank God for that, because it's in so many cases, you know, like I was fortunate enough to grow up with a mother who, you know, she got very passionate about this and dive deep into learning how we can heal ourselves naturally. I think God has given us everything we need, you know, to heal ourselves. But it's like when I sit in a doctor's office and I'm like, yeah, this is going on with me. And like, they don't touch you. They don't check anything out. They just ask you a few questions and then, oh, okay, maybe just take some of this. Or or no answers. So many times I leave, I have no answers. And I just think that it's so sad that so many people who are not available to this information, they go into the doctors and then they go home and they're just blinded.
They don't know. They don't know this is even a possibility.
Right.
A lot of people have never even heard that almonds could be causing them to have gas or bloating. Like, that's a crazy statement. And again, I think almonds are much better than processed food, and some people can eat almonds just fine. But, you know, whether it's spinach could be an issue for some people because it has oxalates. This is another one of these problematic compounds in food. Oxalates are a component of the main kidney stone that we get as humans, calcium oxalate kidney stones. So I think some people get joint pain or other issues in their body from high oxalate foods. You have lectins, you have oxalates, you have digestive enzyme inhibitors. These are all the defense chemicals that occur in those kind of vegetable foods. Can we talk about fish for a second?